That's all. Dear Ajahn Brahm, can you tell us who is the observer? You are. Are you? Are you always observing? If you are the observer, then the observer comes and goes. So what actually is it? There is no thing called the observer, not a permanent entity which is always there. Otherwise, where does it go when you're not observing? So all it is, this is a process. It's not a process. It's not a person. It's just part of the process of being a human being. So you have the observer really should be behind the sense of sight. Okay, here we go. Sometimes I developed a simile called the fruit salad simile. So imagine there is an apple on your plate. And you look at the apple on the plate and it suddenly disappears. Totally disappears. In its place, there is a coconut. And when that suddenly disappears, and then there's a banana. And then that disappears as a coconut comes back. And then there's a cauliflower, not quite fruit salad, but a coconut. And then that disappears, and it's a cauliflower, then a coconut. And there's sometimes there is what else? Anyway, each one of those different types of fruit or vegetables, they represent one of your six senses. The apple of the eye, the cauliflower ear, the banana is the nose. What's the lips? I forget what's, maybe strawberry lips. And, it's a taste. And lastly, what was touch? I'm forgetting the touch. Anyway, and then coconut is your mind, the knower. And if you actually look at the way that your experience works, there is like an apple, and seeing, then you know you've seen. A few microseconds afterwards. Not microseconds, but fraction of a second afterwards. Then you might see again, you know you saw. You hear, you know you heard. You smell, you know you smelt. You tasted, you know you tasted. You touched, you know you touched. After every one of the five senses, then you know afterwards a knowledge of the mind. And because the mind sense follows the other senses really quickly, we think it's continuous. What is similar to seeing and hearing and smelling and tasting and touching? It's because the mind comes in afterwards. And sometimes we know that we knew. We know we knew. Where Descartes used to say, I think, therefore I am, that's wrong. He said, I thought, therefore I thought I was. You've got to put in some time there. But I actually saw this with my own eyes over in Cambridge, because they used to have graffiti in those places, and the graffiti was really smart graffiti. And you could actually understand it, for one, that was smart. And it was, I think, therefore I am, René Descartes. And then, I am, therefore I think. That was Jean-Paul Sartre. Oh no, sorry, I got that wrong. It was to do is to be. That was Descartes. To be is to do, Jean-Paul Sartre. And summed it up, do, be, Frank Sinatra. I kind of like that stuff. But anyway, when you actually put in the time, one sense, and then that leads to another sense, you know what you felt a few seconds ago. And that actually gives this illusion of continuity. Just like those old pictures, even on a piece of paper, little stick men, and they change slightly, and you flip it really quickly, and it looks like the stick man is running. That's just the illusion of the senses going quite fast. But once as you slow them down, once you see them more clearly, You see there's 6 different types of senses. Seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, and knowing. When one is there, the other ones disappear. You only have one at a time. So the observer, the knowing, or the seeing, or the hearing, where does that go when the other ones are active? It doesn't go anywhere. It's just a different sense. It's now active, then it disappears, another one comes up, and then it disappears, another one comes up. No continuity. No permanence. Anyway, could you please tell some stories about your experience with Ajahn Ganha and Ajahn Sing Tong? Thank you very much for giving us very valuable guidance last 8 days. Ajahn Sing Tong. He was a great monk, but unfortunately he died in a plane crash. When I was about 6 years as a monk in that range retreat, that's when they had a big plane crash. And anyway, when I first, because one of the points of being a monk in those days, you could actually go from place to place and visit other monks, not just Ajahn Chah, and to see how they dealt with things. And Ajahn Sing Tong, he was supposed to be a very, very enlightened monk. I wanted to see how he ran his monastery. And you can see what Ajahn Sing Tong taught me. You soon discover it, because I went to his monastery. I was sitting next to him 6 ways, the other senior monks had gone somewhere else. So he started doing the chanting, the blessing. What we do over here, Yo So, but it went into a different verse. It was, it's Yata Wari Waha. That was the chanting we do at lunchtime. And he started chanting, and then I had my hands up, and this is how he chanted. Yata Wari Waha Pura Paripurenti Sagarang Ewa Mewa Ito Dinang Petanang Upaka Ichitang Patita Tumhang Kipa Mewa Samija Tu Sabe Purentu Sangapa Chando. And, I was sort of sitting next to him, and I'd never seen him before. And I thought, what is this? I'd never heard anything like that in my life before. And he would do that every morning in his chanting. And the amount of people from the village who came every morning, they loved him. Because, he taught some incredible deep Dhamma, but he's a great meditator, but also, he knew he had a personality which made him just so popular with the lay people. And even, they all tell the story of once he was staying with this very strict monk, Ajahn Mahabua. And many of the Thai people know he's really, really strict. And in his monastery, if you didn't make it for the morning meeting, then you couldn't go an alms round, which meant you didn't eat that day. So that was, quite sort of strict. You only had one chance a day to have a meal. So if you didn't make it for the morning meeting, you couldn't go an alms round, you couldn't have a meal that day. You had to fast. So Ajahn Sing Tong, he wasn't Ajahn yet, he was just one of the small disciples, young monk. He slept in one morning. Oh my goodness, what am I going to do? So in the forest monastery, he was a local lad, so he managed to find a chicken in that, a forest chicken. They always have those there. Found a forest chicken, grabbed it, and then got a piece of rope, tied a piece of rope around the poor chicken's neck, and dragged the chicken to the meditation hall where they're having the morning meeting. And the chicken was screaming its head off, obviously, whatever chickens do when they're being dragged to the morning meeting. And of course, everybody saw that and wondered what this crazy monk is up to. But then the monk just went up there and just sat down and meditated. And so the bell went and they said, Ajahn Mahabua, Sing Tong, you were late. You can't go on alms round. What do you mean I was late? And he said, he came before the chicken. Which is an idiom, meaning you got up early. And all the monks burst out laughing. And Ajahn Brahm, okay, you can come on alms round. He had a really great sense of humour, did Ajahn Singh Tong. That's why he was lovable and he was so well liked. And if there was a tragedy, that was a tragedy that he died in his plane crash. He'd be a great teacher. Ajahn Ganha, story I can't resist, the Ajahn Ganha story of he was meditating in the forest. There's about 3 other monks were with him at the time. 4 maybe. And in the forest they heard a really strong sound. It was a cobra coming towards them, a king cobra. And they had, I must actually say, the nickname of that king cobra, of king cobras, the mature ones, they used to say in Laotian it was a one-step snake. Because if they bit you, you had 1 step and that was it, dead. Very, very dangerous. And so the king cobra, they opened their eyes to see what this was, and they saw the king cobra come right up to Ajahn Ganha, lifted up its head, opened its hood. Oh, you've heard the story before. Check to see how many times. Now, what would you do if you had this is a true story, it's not a joke. What would you do if there was a cobra right in front of you, looking at you, almost nose to nose? Don't think of running away. That's one of the scary things about seeing these huge snakes in the wild. They could run so far, they could outrun me, easy. And sometimes when I saw them swimming across the lakes, really fast too, jumping in the water was no escape. These were very dangerous animals. And anyway, Ajahn Ganha was just sitting down, cross-legged. So what he did, he lifted up his hand and he patted the king cobra on the head. Thank you for coming to visit me. And that's a true story. And of course, that king cobra would never bite someone like that. Because how rare is it for a snake to get a nice patting on the head? From a great monk like Ajahn Ganha. The snake loved every minute of it. And then after a few minutes, the snake sort of closed its hood, put down its head, and went to the second monk. Lifted up its head, opened its hood, right in front of him. And that second monk said, no way. If you want a patting, get back to him. I'm not going to do that. That was good old Ajahn Ganha. And the other story, he came here to Perth for a rains retreat many, many years ago, Ajahn Ganha. And very early on, and that was the time when we didn't have many facilities, but we were trying to build our main hall. The hall in Bodhinyana Monastery. We had all the plans, but it was going through the council, the Shire Council. And then the president, or the mayor of the council, was a neighbour, Clem Kentish. He came to check us out. And he came in here, and Clem Kentish, he's a dear old friend, he died quite a while ago. He had this really big belly, but he was wearing a suit. If you have a big belly, robes are much better because they don't show up your belly so much. His suit, his buttons were straining. And they could pop any time. And he came up, he didn't know much about Buddhism and what we were doing up here, but I saw him at a distance. But Ajahn Ganha saw him first. And Ajahn Ganha went right up to him. Ajahn Ganha can't speak any English. He went up to him, and this mayor, the future of our monastery basically depended upon him about giving him permission to do this and do that. And what did Ajahn Ganha do? Before I could even stop Ajahn Ganha, he looked at his big belly and started rubbing it. You don't rub the mare's belly. That's not what we do in Australia. But he had this beautiful smile on his face, Ajahn Ganha. And so the mayor I was just so afraid, but the mayor started giggling like a little baby. He loved every minute of it. And of course, we got all our permissions, no trouble. And it was just amazing that monk he could pat a mayor, he could pat a snake, he could pat Donald Trump if he saw Donald Trump. He was an amazing fella. So those are just, you might say they're totally eccentric. But they're so beautiful and so loving and so kind. So Ajahn Sing Tong, and that was Ajahn Gunha. Oh. And they weren't so strict and serious. Well, they were very strict. They're very, very good monks. They're very good senior monks. But the seriousness of them, the idea of them just, you being afraid of them, that wasn't there at all. It was so warm and helpful. Next question, does everyone get enlightened eventually? You told us to let the stream carry us during the retreat. Is life or samsara like the stream and we are all heading in the same direction? Thank you. Somebody actually asked the Buddha that, does everyone get enlightened? He said, well, oh no. And then he said, well, that's a difficult question to answer. And then he said, well, 50% or 30%. But remember, those people, the Buddha said, maybe not, those weren't people who came to Jhana growth. Will you get enlightened? Quite likely eventually. Because there's something which somebody said a long time ago, and I just totally agree with it. Once you've actually heard some of this Dhamma, these teachings, and seen examples, you can't forget it. And sometimes people, they go off and do other things for a while. But eventually they come back again, they do whatever they can. But you can't just disregard it. There's something beautiful about it. Anyway, that's why I always felt. And something is worthwhile coming back and just doing as much as you can. You don't have to achieve. That's the wonderful thing about it. You can relax and be peaceful and just let it happen when it happens. There's no rush. That's the other thing I like. It's rush. It'll take its time, but you'll get there. You don't do it in this lifetime, the next lifetime. You've got plenty of lifetimes, so don't stress out. While observing my breath, I felt it in different parts of the body. Is that normal? Depends which parts of the body. If it's in your right toe, your big toe and the right foot, that's a bit weird. But it's not abnormal. And this is actually serious. For a time when I was meditating, I'm just trying to investigate, to challenge perceptions. I wanted to actually find out, can I breathe as if it's through my right big toe? And after a while you could do it. There's no air going in and out, but you're changing your perceptions. It was like you were. And this is one of the things about perception. Sometimes we think it's right or we think it's wrong. Perception. You say, I saw it myself. But really, did you? Because a lot of times your perception can be changed this way or that way. I'm not talking about with your eyes closed in meditation, with your eyes open. Because I remember I was having some really good meditation over in Thailand, and I was just walking, I was walking from the dyeing shed over to the main hall in Thailand. And I had to pass the wash place where the monks would actually bathe. And I saw somebody had left a towel on the line, which was common, it's just drying. But the towel was black. The towel was black, jet black. In all my life, I've never seen a black towel. I don't think any of you have got a black towel. You've got pink, you've got blue, you've got maybe dark grey or something, but not real jet black. And I thought, wow, this is weird. I wonder who owns this towel. I've never seen a black towel ever before in my life. And I looked at it, stared at it. I had plenty of time, not in a rush, for about 5 minutes. And then it changed to white, all by itself. This wasn't a high tech or anything. All it was my perceptions were just playing around, seeing things which you haven't seen before. I wasn't crazy or mad or anything. What it was my meditation was really strong. And sometimes you read in some of the Buddha's sutras, it says sometimes you can empower your perceptions, like nighttime looks like daytime. Daytime looks like nighttime. It's just playing around with your perceptions, with your eyes and with the sounds and everything else. Interesting, just how. And this was real, not mad, not crazy, because I checked it out. There was what you can do with perceptions. Anyway, so you can actually, after doing that, just again playing around, imagining the breath going through my toe, in and out. It's really cool. You should try it. But I know for sure that some of those things you do as a monk, as a meditator, are a bit weird. So I was always concerned to make sure that I'd met plenty of friends around. So if people did think I was really going crazy, and get the people to take me away, to give me, I always remember just this young man, and he was a Nepalese. His name was Dhruva, I remember him very well. And he had a epileptic fit in front of our first centre in Magnolia Street. And so, we called the ambulance, and when they came to check on him, his fit had disappeared, but we thought, maybe get the ambulance to check him out. One of the first things they asked him, he said, "What day is it today?" And he didn't know. And then so they put him in the ambulance to take him into, I think, Royal Perth Hospital just to have a checkup. And I asked him, I said, "Why do you ask him what day it is?" "Oh, that's standard procedure. Because if you don't know what day it is, then you're obviously not really in your right mind. And so you get in the ambulance, we give you a checkup." And I said, "Oh, really? That's interesting to know." Because I didn't know what day it was. You don't need to know what day it is as a monk. It's on Monday you go to work, or Tuesday you do your washing, or whatever it is. It's just, what we really did know is how close it was to the moon days. But, that wouldn't have impressed them. So they want to know Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So what day is it today, do you know? If you don't, I'll call the ambulance. So from that time on, I really made an effort to remember what day of the week it was. Dear Ajahn, what is the best practice to do during the dying process? Just to die. The best practice to do, obviously, one of the first things to do is please understand and don't overreact to death. Because there was a little exercise which I did over in Hong Kong. Actually, I've never done it here. It takes a bit of time. I got, it was in, was it Queen Elizabeth Hospital or something? It was one of the training wings there. And I got these nurses, psychologists, psychiatrists, a couple of doctors as well, and also a few blow-ins. These were just disciples. And they all came in this little hospital for a day of meditation, mindfulness. And we did one session on how to die. And what I did, we paired everybody off. We just choose a friend and just, so there's two people. One is A, you're B, A, B, A, B, A, B, A, B. So, you know who's A, you know who's B. They just talk to whatever. And then when I ring the bell, bang, I want one of you to pretend to have a heart attack and fall on the floor dying. Just pretend, please. Don't do it really. And the other one, just react as you normally would do. If you were with somebody who was dying, the first responder, or whatever they call it. And so they chatted. They were very well behaved, and they did what I asked. When I rang the bell, one of them, and they'd seen people have a heart attack, and those who hadn't had seen it on the TV or something. So they acted it well, and they fell to the floor, and the other one was actually trying to do what they thought they should do if their friend was having a heart attack. Stay with me, help is coming, just Now look into my eyes, don't close your eyes, whatever. And then after about 5 minutes of that, I stopped everybody and said, okay, get up again. What was it like, when your friend was panicking because they thought you were dying? And they all said it was very, very uncomfortable. It's not what they wanted. They wanted to die peacefully, not with somebody just ranting in their ear. Stay with me, don't go and see the light, don't see the light, help is coming, it's okay. People overreacted. And that overreaction was very, very disturbing. And they thought, if it really happens, that's not how I would like to die. I would like to die more peacefully. So, okay, switch over. Who was A before? No, the A before. Now I want the other person, when I ring the bell, to pretend to have a heart attack. And they did. They fell to the ground. Oh, and the other person said, it's okay. Be peaceful. If you want to die, that's fine by me. The whole attitude changed to something which was far more caring and kind. And afterwards, the assessment was that's a far, far better way to die, peacefully, kindly, in when people are not overreacting and making more peace with what's happening. I thought that's a wonderful little method so people actually could realize. And if it's somebody who's dying, don't overreact, please be kind and calm, so they can be calm too. Dying is a very personal process. And I'm sure that many of you have noticed that your loved one might be in the hospital bed, they could die any time, and you're waiting and waiting, so we're just going to go out to have something to eat, just a snack. When you go out of the room, that's when your loved one dies. Because you're disturbing them. And a lot of the time, it's wonderful just to get out of the way and let them die peacefully. It is a private moment. And it's enough for your own dealing with this dying process, and rather than having to deal with all the emotional baggage of your friends and loved ones. Don't die, we can do something. Don't die, please. Oh, I don't want you to die. Look, it's enough of a hard task for you to do the dying. And other people just put all this stuff on you, the emotional baggage on you. That really is a bit too much. And now we'll finish off with that story. There was, many years ago, there was a Western Tibetan nun. I forget what her name was now, so long ago. I was giving her some counseling because she was dying of cancer. And eventually she got so close to dying, she was put in the hospice. Remember the old hospice at Shenton Park? It was a community-run hospice, and they closed it down. The government closed it down. I thought it was terrible. Fortunately, other hospices opened up afterwards. It was a beautiful hospice. And anyway, she went in that hospice to die, and she called me one day. I was over here in Jhana Monastery. Ajahn Brahm, can you please come? I'm going to die tomorrow. She knew. It's amazing just how many times when you're really sick like that, you know you're on the way out and you're going to go. So I've been counselling her for a long time, so I knew that this was really important. So I stopped what I was doing, got a car, and went to Shenton Park. And when I got there, that's where the interesting part happened, because you had to check in with the head nurse there at the time, who was a Catholic nurse. And she made Margaret Thatcher look like a teddy bear. She was just so authoritarian. Who are you? And I said, oh no, I've just come from a monastery because this lady asked me to come and visit her. I'm sorry, you can't come. But she just invited me. It's about an hour and a half's journey to get here. So I don't care about that. We have to respect our patient's wishes. I said, yeah, but she called me. Come with me, she said. She ordered me. And we went to her door. And on the door of this patient, she had written a sign, absolutely no visitors. Very clearly, the patient had written that on the door, absolutely no visitors. And this head nurse looked at me and said, "See?" And I looked at it, and honestly, at the bottom was the little words written, "Except for Ajahn Brahm." And you've heard me tell you this before, but I could not resist. I could not resist it. See? I should have. That was not very cool or compassionate. But anyway, I did that. And so she went off in a huff and let me open the door and go in. But then I asked this nun who's dying, really thin and just very weak, "Why did you put that note on the door? Why are you only allowing me to come in?" And she said, "Because you're one of the few people who doesn't overreact. All the other people who come in here, they look at me and say, 'Oh, you look terrible. Oh, you must be really in pain.' That makes me feel worse. You just come in here and tell me jokes. You treat me like a human being, not a cancer patient." And when I heard that, you got a lot of understanding how to visit people in hospital. Don't deal with them as if they're sick. And how are you today? How many times do you hear that if you're in hospital? "I'm sick, okay." Just get that over and done with. Instead, just what she really wanted was actually to be with a friend and to talk ordinary stuff, not dying person stuff. That came actually afterwards in our conversation when she wanted it. But I wasn't emotionally upset. Yeah, she's going to die. It's wonderful. She knows when she's going to die. Makes life much more easier. And she did die that night. So that's the last thing. She actually asked for the jokes. So I told her a few terrible ones. But that's actually how to deal with the dying process. Personally, you want space and freedom and being by yourself. Just learn how to let go. And how do you let go? Being kind. Being kind to your body. Body, you've served me really, really well all these years. Thank you. And having no one around you to tell you what to do, because then you can be mindful and be aware. Imagine you were meditating, I was sitting behind you. "Don't do it that way, do it this way." What are you aware of? Are you aware of this? That'd be terrible. But there was, over in Malaysia and Singapore, there was a time when there were many sort of Buddhists who were dying. And there'd be one person in their family, sort of a niece or cousin or something, who was one of these evangelical Christians. And they felt it their duty to come and see their grandma and convert them before they died. Otherwise, grandma will go to hell. Can't have like that. And so they'd come and they'd harass these poor people who were dying. And the people who were dying, they were devout Buddhists. And they said, "Look, I really love you very much, but I'm a Buddhist, okay. But the pastor would not leave you alone until you converted." And so that was a lot of extra stress for the person who was dying. So they asked me, because I used to go to Malaysia, Singapore a lot, said, "What should we do when that happens to us?" My son comes and they try to convert me. I said, "Easy. Convert. Become a Christian. Because then they'll leave you alone. Once they've left you alone and gone out the door, convert back to being a Buddhist again. What's wrong with that? You can convert one way, you can convert back again. And it gets rid of them." Well, those of you who know Dr. Kesri Dhammananda, I've told him that. He burst out laughing. He said, "Oh, yeah, it's really good, I'll tell everybody that." I said, "Don't tell everybody that, otherwise it won't work anymore." Anyway, dear Ajahn, is it true that the monks have a fruit juice problem? First time I've heard about it. Where did that one come from? Not having too much fruit juice? No. You've got me there, you've stumped me. you're much wiser than I. That must be some Zen koan, which I don't understand. Have a fruit juice, probably. No. Okay. The Vietnamese monk Thich Nhat Hanh has passed away on the 22nd, that was this morning, at the age of 95. Yeah, we knew about that one. You know Thich Nhat Hanh? Yeah.
Oh, yes, the Vietnamese.
Yeah, Vietnamese. Yeah.
In America?
No, he was over back in Vietnam. Yeah, he's gone now. Yeah, is that a big deal?
95.
Yeah, but he talked too much, so he couldn't get Nobel Peace. Sorry. He was actually always ringing a bell. I remember going to... Oh, please excuse me, but it's... He'd say the same things to me when I do stupid things. But I was at a conference. Well, where was it? I think it was in Vietnam or was in Japan or somewhere. And anyway, I sat next to him for about 20 minutes. I tried to make a conversation with him. He didn't say anything. Basically ignored me. But anyway, that when, you know what conference is? You know, we have the breakout groups. So, you know, we have a sort of subject. And then everybody goes with a group of maybe 10 or 15 other delegates, and we talk about something. And then one person has to make the notes so they can report it to the rest of not congregation, the rest of the conference, the rest of the delegates. So we had this, and it was one of his disciples, this senior nun, and she was actually reporting on one group. But the problem was, because it was like a conference, a Buddhist conference, they were all walking so slowly and mindfully. This is not a joke, this actually happened. And so the head of the conference said, we now invite Venerable Sister, whatever her name was, to please come and report on like gender equity or something in Buddhism. And then she got up, really what people think is mindfully, very slowly. When she got up, she picked up her notes and walked slowly to the lectern to give her report. And you know, the people actually asked her, you know, quite kindly, please, we've only got a few minutes. Speed up. But she wouldn't do it. She walked so slowly. And when she got to the lectern, you know, the time allotted to her had actually expired. And they told her, please turn around and go back. And that had actually happened. There is a time for walking slowly. And there's a time for walking fast. But anyway, it's that's what I remember from that. It was really good. Entertaining. And he's also another one of those conferences, telling all these anecdotes. It's fun being a monk. You go to these conferences and stuff. This was actually over in Cambodia, in Phnom Penh. And I was, again, I was representing Australia, and there's this Tibetan monk. I forget which one he was representing. But then there was a Sri Lankan monk. Please excuse me. I really respect many Sri Lankan monks, but this one was a bit, I think the word is loquacious. He wouldn't stop speaking. And he got up there and started giving his report. He spoke in Sinhala, which no one understood. And he kept on going on and on and on and on and on and on, very loud. And I was sitting next to the Tibetan monk, and the Tibetan monk started laughing, and really laughing. He laughed so much he fell off his chair. And he was laughing his head off. And the Sri Lankan monk saw him, but wouldn't stop, just carried on. And his monk was holding his tummy, literally rolling about. I tried to say, stop here, it's disrespectful. But he didn't understand me, so he just kept on laughing. Am I being disrespectful? No, look, wherever you go in this world, you've got to know the local culture and make sure you respect the local culture and just don't sort of overdo it. Anyway, there are four stages of enlightenment: stream winner, once returner, non-returner, etc. Events. That's a good question. Does one realize when these happen? How do they know? Yes. Some are, some aren't. But for example, stream winning. There's on the path to being a stream winning and actually getting to be a stream winner. When you're on the path to being a stream winner, that's very hard to discern accurately, but when you are a stream winner, that is an event. That's one of the reasons why, okay, let all these secrets out, that when a person claims to be a stream winner, if it's a monk or a nun claims to be a stream winner, we're obliged to check them out, because if they say they're a stream winner and they're just exaggerating, then that can be such a serious offense in the Vinaya they have to disrobe and never become a monk again. That's really serious. So we have to find out, is it real or is it not real? And one of the things we ask is when and where. It is an event, stream winning. And I remember I was just discussing this about a few weeks ago with Ajahn Brahm, and apparently there is a sutta somewhere, and it actually makes it, again, very clear the Buddha said it is an event. Something happens, it blows your mind. So you know exactly where it happened, when. But sometimes when you have that event, it's likely to be a stream winner, but you don't know yet. I think in one of my books I describe it as like a big explosion goes up. It's not an explosion, but a big event has happened, you think you're enlightened. That's a good, like this morning when I said about the rotten fish curry anecdote, when I really thought I was enlightened. And then something happened to show me that I wasn't. Unfortunately, it was very, very fast. But usually what happens, you know the sorts of things which a stream winner can't have. When you're a stream winner, you know those things, or once returner, non-returner, or fully enlightened being. Fully enlightened being cannot get angry, cannot have any lust. When you know those things, so they can't get afraid either. When you know those things, then if you find after a while, you haven't had any anger for weeks, months, years, sometimes like the explosion has happened, but the dust, the smoke has not yet settled yet. It takes a while to find out what is left and what has been totally destroyed, never to arise again. So you have to be patient and wait to find out exactly what happened. It is momentary, it's a time when it happens, and then after a while you find out what defilements or anything, delusions you've got left. Thank you for asking, that's a good question. It is a wonder to witness you in action with all the jokes and stories you share, allowing some huge teachings to land deeply. Thank you. Aside from mindfulness, how do you remember them more? I am a teacher and would love to teach with stories more. One of the things you did notice was when I was just a student going to Cambridge and teaching and going to talks by Buddhist monks. Many of those Buddhist monks were great teachers, but I was so bored by them because they just say just what you read in the books. And they would actually teach with no passion, and like compassion, or you can see just the way you change the tone of your voice. And sometimes, and when I was teaching, sometimes you had to make it entertaining to keep people's attention. I remember doing that many, many times, especially when I started teaching Buddhism. And one thing I often would do was, when people started nodding their heads or looking at the clock, that's when you start telling a story. And one of the famous ones I used to say was about the gentleman, the man, who had an afternoon off work. And he was just hanging around the house, and his wife said to him, "So darling, I haven't got enough eggs to make the meal. Could you kindly go to the market and get some eggs for me?" He said, "Yes, certainly, but I've never been there before. Can you draw me a mud map and instructions what to get, where the store is which sells the eggs?" I said, "Yes, certainly." And so the wife made a little map of the place, the market, and got some money for him, and off he went, happy to have a nice walk and to help his nice wife and get a nice dinner. So off he was walking there. When he got into the market, this young man came up, maybe 16, 17 or something, and came right up to him and said, "You're the ugliest person I've ever seen in my life. And I don't know what you've been using for your aftershave, but it smells like dog poo. And your face, it looks like a camel, the back end of a camel, that is." Now, he really insulted him. Now, of course, I can't imitate exactly what he said because I'm a very sensitive monk. So I'm trying my best to say words of abuse. But I remember once hearing these words of abuse, from this. When I was just in an airport once, and I always like to sort of talk to people, make friends, and this was an Arab. And he said, the worst insult you can ever give a person in the Arab world is, actually there's two. The second worst is, "May the fleas of 1,000 camels infest your armpits." Why are you laughing? You're writing it down as well. So when you see your boss at work, what did you learn at the retreat? You say, "May the fleas of 1,000 camels infest your armpits, boss." But then he told me, he said, the worst insult you can give to a person or curse is, "May you get what you want as soon as you want it." Oh, wow, that's deep. That's a curse in the Arab world. May you get what you want as soon as you want it. Imagine that happened. What would your life be like? Could you handle that? Anyway, when he said that, I thought that's why the second one made a lot of sense to me. That was, that was really cursed, the second one, but the first one was, oof, that's very deep. Anyway, I would say that this husband, really being kind, got insulted in the marketplace in front of everybody. And so he turned around and went home straight away. "You're home early, dear." "Yes, I am at home early because I don't want to ever go to that market again. It's a terrible place. People are just so uncouth, uncivilized there. People just criticize you in public for doing nothing at all, and they're really awful. And I don't know why they do this to me. It's really, I never want to go to that market ever again." Now, I say that fast, just it wakes people up. It's not like the ordinary way you speak as a Buddhist monk. I don't know, was it convincing? No? Okay, I'll have to do more practice. But you do that to wake people up, and then he gets the reason why you say that. And the wife just said, "What happened?" "Oh, I was criticized by this young man. I don't even know him." And she said, "Oh, him. He does that to all of us. That poor boy, when he was young, had an accident, hit his head. He's actually brain damaged. The poor young man will never be able to go to school, will never be able to find a nice partner in life, to share his life with. He can't get a job. He just hangs around the market, and he says all these things. We don't take it seriously. He's brain damaged. He hit his head, that's all." And when the husband heard that, he thought, why did I get so upset at him? Poor fellow. And so he really calmed down. And when the wife saw he was really calmed down, she said, "Darling, I still need those eggs." And so he took the money and he went back to the market again. And of course he was abused and shouted at again in front of everybody. But this time it didn't really matter. He didn't react at all because he was being criticized by someone who was brain damaged. And so he got his eggs at the store and came back home again afterwards. And it didn't matter at all to him. The moral of that story is this. When you go home tomorrow, if you go home tomorrow, and you see your husband, he shouts at you, "Why do you do this? Why do you do that? You're stupid. Why do you go to these stupid retreats, places? You should do some work like everybody else." Don't get upset. Just assume that while you were away, he hit his head. And he's temporarily brain damaged. Because that was what the Buddha said, being angry is temporarily brain damaged. So you don't need to do that. Okay? So no need to shout. That was but because it was an interesting story and I could raise my voice, that was actually a great way of teaching because it meant that people would listen. You're surprising people. But anyway, so that is actually how you do it. So how would you like to listen to these stories? So if you're going to teach them, you listen. It's a waste of time telling a story. It might be 100% accurate, but no one hears it because it's boring. It has to be interesting. And many of these teachings are incredibly interesting. You add a story to it because life is a series of stories. It's not a series of events. Many of those stories haven't finished yet. That's why. Oh no, stop encouraging me to tell too many stories. It's also, you want to learn this, you find your classes will never finish on time. You always figure another story. But anyway. Ajahn Brahm, is there any way we can support a dying family member in the moment of their passing, despite the rebirth, depending on their karma? Should we stay quiet, or can we say comforting words to help the dying person be less scared? Or is there any chance that it's suitable? Yeah, of course, if somebody is dying, they're in your family. Just first of all, give them permission to die. Reassure them it's okay to die. It's normal. It's part of life and death. And so if you give them that kindness, my permission, please don't keep suffering for me. And then it makes them relax more, so they can let these things happen. And you always have to tell them that when you die, just you let go, let this body go. And if you can convince them, it's the truth. Once the body just starts to turn off, the sight goes and hearing goes and smell, taste and physical touch goes, you feel so much nicer, so much more peaceful. And that's why many times people who have had near-death experiences, they come back, they're not afraid of death anymore. It actually feels much better, more peaceful, especially if you've got sicknesses or very old. It feels much more peaceful and delightful once you've finished with this body, even just with death. So, you've got something to look forward to. Do you think PTSD, anxiety disorder, depression, eating disorders can be resolved, healed from mindfulness alone? No. For kindfulness, yes. Yeah, of course. It's been done. How to overcome anxiety. Okay, here we go, another story. When you have a story, it's easier for people to understand. You can explain it in theory, but a story makes it alive. And that was the story of this student in Adelaide University. I think I told it was bedridden, anxiety. Did I tell it here? In front of everybody or just individuals? I'll tell it again anyway, because somebody may not have heard it. It's a powerful story. So she had anxiety disorder, very extreme. So she was bedridden, couldn't get out of bed to go and see her, to do her studies. She was totally bedridden. She had obviously the best medical care, from the university, but nothing was working. And that's when her uncle, who lives here, he was actually here this morning at Bodhinyana Monastery, the uncle, and he said, go ring Ajahn Brahm. So she called me. And because I know the uncle, I gave her sort of priority. Yeah, what is it? And she said her anxiety disorder. And I asked her, so extreme, she couldn't even get out of bed. She had a boyfriend, Lloyd. I don't want to give out too many names. Lloyd, who was looking after her. And just amazing boyfriend, because he was cooking and cleaning for her, doing everything. And she could do nothing. And then I told her, when you have an anxiety attack, where in your body do you feel it? Because an anxiety attack, you can know it in your mind, but you have a manifestation, a counterpart feeling in your body whenever you get an anxiety attack, a panic attack. And she said she feels it in her chest. So exactly where in your chest? Well, in my chest. Not good enough. I told her, give me a call in 3 days. I want coordinates. From your navel, belly button, how many centimeters, millimeters up? How much to the left, to the right? Is it a circle? Is it an oval? Where you feel it in your body? Where is it? I gave her something to do. What it really was a trick for me, making sure she's going to be really mindful, really aware, not just a little bit of awareness. And so 3 days later, she was a student. She was a very smart lady. So she told me coordinates, when it started, how it grew, where it was mostly located. Great. Now, what does it feel like? Is it burning? Is it aching, pulsating? I know it's painful, but what type of pain? Give me a call in 3 days with a description. Another task. It was also very helpful. She was taking responsibility for her healing rather than letting other people do it. So she felt in charge. And so, 3 days later, an amazing description of the different types of heat, cold, pulsating, whatever it was, stabbing pains. That's all she had to do for 3 days to tell me. I said, great. Now you are aware of that feeling in your physical chest. Now, the next time you have a panic attack, what I want you to do is take your hand and massage it with as much kindness as you possibly can. Massage it. And I told her, because what type of monk I am, I just always like telling a few jokes, but I also, not just a joke, this was serious. If you can't do it yourself, get your boyfriend, Lloyd, to give it a massage. I don't think you'd complain. She can give it a massage as well. And give me a call in 3 days. And that was when she did give a call after 9 days. So did you follow the instruction? Yes. What happened when you massaged that pain associated with anxiety? What happened? He said, the tension, the tightness, the counterpart feeling to anxiety in my body disappeared. It vanished after a while because you were massaging it. And after a while, the tension there in the body disappeared. Great. And what happened to the anxiety in your mind? I think I mentioned this last time to you. And she said this wonderful, what I call the Einstein, the eureka moment. She paused. She said, the anxiety left as well. It disappeared. When the physical counterpart disappears, the anxiety, the cause disappears. Great, now you know how to deal with anxiety. It worked so well. A few days later, she was out of bed, she was doing a dental course. And I think I also told you the nice parts of the story. Eventually she married Lloyd. The Sunken Gardens in UWA. And she insisted that I do the chanting for her, the blessing for her. So I'm her mate. She's got 2 or 3 kids now. And you see them every now and again. You know what it's like having kids. they're really young, very boisterous, and so it takes them a while to settle them down, but you see her every now and again. And that's actually how she overcome her anxiety. Wonderful little story. How would you describe intuition? Intuition is what you know when the brain stops thinking and just knows. And many psychologists have done experiments. Your intuition is far more valid, accurate than your thoughts and your logic. Okay, I'll say this one. There is sometimes people say, well, what's the benefits of meditation? It makes you quiet so that intuition can actually happen. And because of my field of education growing up at Cambridge, there was one young man there called Brian Josephson. And he was a meditator, but he was actually doing the TM type of meditation. But he knew about meditation. But he was also a researcher in quantum tunneling. And he had a theory, but he made the breakthrough in that theory after meditating. And the quantum tunneling, it seems to be impossible, but he proved how it was done. He got all that from his meditation. And that was the basis for supercomputers, which ran at really, really cold temperatures, close to absolute zero. And as a result of that, he got a Nobel Prize for physics. And his Nobel Prize for physics is the only Welsh man who's got a Nobel Prize for physics. And he always says that was because of meditation, stilling his mind to get that insight. Big time. The Nobel Prize. At the time, his main opponent, who said this is impossible, it can't happen, was a double Nobel Prize laureate. And this young man, he stood his ground. It took him a few years, and the experiments were done, and this young man was right. And he got his Nobel Prize, Brian Josephson, the Josephson Junction. Can you kindly explain the significance of a stupa? Why is there a Buddha statue inside that is covered by the bell-shaped statue? That was in Borobudur in Java. And the reason for that, the original, is supposed to represent the different levels of existence. Down the very bottom is the hell realms, but it's not really hell like in the time, like in other religions. The doors of hell are always open to you. You can leave whenever you want, if you're kind. If you have compassion. In the bottom, one of my favorite little carvings in that Borobudur statue over in Java was of a man who was having his head cut by this razor wheel. And when another guy came to see him, the guy with his head cut by razor wheel, the razor wheel left him and went to this new guy. And the old guy said, I was told after 300 years or so that another person will come who did the same terrible thing I did, which was I pushed my mother over and really injured her. And now someone else will come who also did that terrible thing to his mum. And that's you. You've got 300 years. And this new man experiencing the pain for the first time, the new guy said, it's a terrible thing to injure your own mother. So I'm going to take this, my 300 years, and the next 300 years is 400 or 500 years. So no one else has to experience this, out of kindness to other people. And he had this beautiful moment of kindness, and the razor wheel exploded, and he got reborn in the heaven realm. Because you can't have kindness in a hell realm. Kindness, forgiveness gets rid of all that sense of guilt. That's why the doors of hell are always open. The doors of everywhere are open. If you have kindness and wisdom, no place is a prison for you. Anyway, the significance of the stupa. This one over here what we wanted was getting jhana growth started. We want to have something which makes the place look a little bit traditional. We don't have many Buddha statues up here. When we first started, we didn't have hardly any. And so we decided, we didn't decide, it was Venerable Sri Panyawado over over in Java. He was a very nice monk. We had a lot of fun together. And he's still alive. But I must say that he gave me one of the most wonderful compliments. He said, the book which I wrote of the Art of Disappearing, when that first came out, I went to see him, and he was holding a copy and said, this is the best book on Buddhism I've ever read. Thank you so much, Ajahn Brahm. He never expected me to tell everybody, but that is a really good book, The Art of Disappearing. But anyway, that he said, well, I give a lot of talks over there. My books are very popular over there. And he even said quite a few times, he said, more people know me in Indonesia than any other monk. He said, I'm the most popular monk in Indonesia. I hardly ever go there, I'm not Indonesian. I said, sorry. He said, no, it's good. And so, because of that, the many, many of his disciples, they wanted to help build jhana growth. So what they did, they offered a stupa, 2 on either side. They sent it over here, they shipped it over here. And Ajahn Brahm had a wonderful time. It's just little blocks, fitting them all together like a puzzle. And that's what it was, and that's those stupas. And now, we're building another meditation centre in Newbury, in Melbourne. We need a stupa there. I think it's already arrived from Borobudur.
Even in New South Wales as well, I think.
Yeah.
The one, the Santuti?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
The stupa as well.
Yeah. That is really nice, because we go over there and help them out. They come over here and help us out. Very nice. Great connections. And I must admit, the Indonesian Buddhists are always so helpful. They're in many different parts of the world, and they're really always there to look after everybody. I'm really impressed with Indonesian Buddhism, I must say. I'm also impressed with Thais, with Sri Lankans, with Indians, with who are from Malaysians and Singaporeans and Australians and everybody, because if I don't include everybody, I get into big trouble afterwards. Why do you leave us out, Ajahn Brahm? You're welcome. Okay, that's the thing, was stupid. I have also experienced a moment like the story of your peer being hypnotized, the way it caused you to wonder afterwards about free will. What phenomena is causing us to do the things we do? Writing our life path. Much of the things you do, you can actually trace them back, first of all, to people who really influenced you in life. Teachers at school, parents, uncles, aunties, people you loved a lot. And then they influence you a lot, but of course it goes much deeper than that. Some of the influences from your previous lives. And those sometimes you can't really see that clearly. But if you can get your previous lives, then they actually illuminate some of your characters you had before. Look at me, I became a Buddhist monk. How the heck did that happen? None of my family were Buddhists. My parents couldn't even spell the word. So, as obviously there's some things from the previous lives. I was talking with the monks about this just a day or two ago. The first monk which I saw, it blew my mind. It was amazing. Wow, that's a real monk. It wasn't like just seeing an acrobat or seeing a famous person. It was like seeing a monk. It was just something which really rocked me inside. And of course that's because of previous lives. Does writing daily on a diary help to empty your mind and could empower your dreams with metta? Nah, I don't think. Writing a diary, of course it means you have to spend more time and more attention writing. Empower your dreams? Maybe. That I'm not quite sure, but I know what you write down, it gets into your mind much more. That's why I remember as a kid, one of the punishments in schools in those days, write down 50 times, I will not speak while the teacher's speaking or something. But because you had to write it down again and again and again, that did empower the message. You had to pay more attention. That doesn't work anymore. You just press a button on a computer and it prints it out as many times as you want. Dear Ajahn Brahm, does people diagnosed with autism spectrum have a different mind to another? That's another beautiful thing, autism spectrum. And sometimes there's people with autism, they don't even know about it. And can you be a monk or a nun with autism? It really depends, whether it works for you or not. There's so many different types of autistic people. And I don't know why we have to label them and think they can't fit in. Again, that's one of the wonderful things, again, living in a village in Thailand, you see that anybody who was slightly different was welcomed into the community. It's probably the same in villages in Indonesia and many other places. They weren't segregated. And they joined in everything. Again, that lady who did the best gift I've ever seen. She just made this, she sneaked in, she was so embarrassed, she put it down, and that just really melted my heart. And she was someone who would just grunt. That was her language. Everyone knew what she meant. These are close friends. I thought it was beautiful. She had a life, not in an institution, in the village. I'm sure you've had cases like that in the places you may have grown up, where instead of putting them away because they didn't fit in, the village or the community, we sort of expanded our boundaries so they could fit in. And it was a wonderful thing to see. So even with autism, what is autism? It can have some very, very good aspects and helps of autism. Let them come in. Everyone's got a different mind, by the way. Dear Ajahn, I understand will has a very limited role in meditation, maybe to get the meditation seated and maybe aware of the breath initially, but in daily life, how should we use will? Is it to support tasks and to act with kindness, care, gentleness, generosity, respect, etc.? Please advise. Yeah. In the life, you have to sometimes decide what you're going to do, the best way of doing it, but always be ready to listen to other people's choices, because you may be the most enlightened person in the world, the most educated person in the world, the wisest person in the world. You've been here and done it before, but doesn't mean it has to be done that way again. Listen. So sometimes people have very strong wills, and because of that, they create a lot of difficulty in their life, a lot of discord. You can see that when you've got such a strong will. I mean, a good example of that is like Donald Trump. Did you hear that there was an assassination attempt against him? You heard that news? Someone tried to shoot him. The guards said, they saw the shooter take out the gun, and the security guard says, "Donald, duck!" It's a joke. And the gunman burst out laughing, couldn't press the trigger. Okay. Dear Ajahn Brahm, what Buddha will say about COVID? Buddha didn't have COVID. Not his time, I don't know. Where did you write all your books? On pieces of paper? I couldn't type. I'm doing this quickly because there's quite a few. This is the last chance to do them. Why would I feel judged and like I'm not accepted, even in a place like this? I can consciously think to myself that it's probably a delusion, yet the emotional feeling is this body overwhelms that ability to be mindful. Thanks, Mr. Monkman. Mr. Monkman. Sometimes we get criticized and judged, by others. But, you can't do that. I just think that's really, 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 really unfair. Like, sometimes people look at me and they judge me, say, you're fat. I'm not fat. This is not fat. When I became a monk, 47, almost 48 years ago now, that I was very thin. There's photographs of me, you can see those. And I used to always think I had to develop lots of kindness and compassion. I think, you probably all agree that I'm a kind monk. And so every year, your heart gets bigger. And a long time ago, my heart got so big, it was pressing against my rib cage. It didn't have anywhere else to go except down and out. It's just a big heart, that's all. That's my excuse, and I'm sticking to it. So, if you feel judged and like you're not accepted, of course you're accepted, you're here. And just like the people who are autistic or schizophrenic, or they're accepted. And they're loved for who they are, and they can teach you so much. Again, it was working with Down syndrome kids as a student. That was my volunteer work. Sorry, they weren't kids, they were teenagers mostly. And they taught me so much. I volunteered to work with Down syndrome people because a few of my friends were Christians, and it was peer pressure. If you can do it, I can do it. Flying the flag for a Buddhist. And I went there, and my friends only lasted a couple of weeks. I went there for 2 years. Every Thursday afternoon, Full-Born Hospital outside of Cambridge. And I loved going there. I really enjoyed it, because I learned so much. These were people I cared for, and they cared for me. And what the story I tell, which really showed me how much I learned, from Down syndrome people, was I was walking in one day in the afternoon, to do some occupational therapy work with them. And one of them looked at me and ran right towards me, put his hands around me, gave me this big hug. He said, "What's wrong?" he said. And to this day, I don't know how he could have known that the night before I broke up with my girlfriend. He knew straight away. His emotional sensitivity was so powerful. And I thought, wow, I want to learn from you. Emotionally, they were just way, way advanced over me. And I saw that, and I wanted to learn from that. That's why I enjoyed that. So, judging people and just thinking you're superior or they're inferior and then to be put away somewhere so you don't have to see them and deal with them, that doesn't make any sense to me. Anyway, Ajahn Brahm, I am a compassionate person in my life generally, but I often find that I take on the problems of other people as if they are my own. How can I be compassionate and help people in my life without taking on their problems? That's what Ajahn Chah, he taught me this. He said, when you're a monk, part of your job, especially if you go to the West, you have to listen to people all about their marriage problems when you're not married, their work problems when you don't go to work in an office, all of their problems about their family when you don't really have much of a family when you're a monk, all the financial problems when you don't have any money at all. How are you going to deal with all of that? One of the reasons I think why monks and nuns are very popular as counselors and sort of amateur psychologists. One of the main reasons is because we're cheap. We don't charge anything. How many places can you go and sit in front of a monk for about 10 or 20 minutes and not get a bill afterwards? Pretty good advice. We're cheap and high quality. Is that right? Well, you keep on coming, so it must be something. Okay. So Ajahn Chah used to tell me, he said, make sure, if you're going to be doing any counseling, helping, listening to people, make sure you imagine, you visualize yourself as a rubbish bin. It's true. You get everybody's rubbish, you let it go in. But the most important thing is be a rubbish bin with a hole in the bottom. So you don't keep anything. So you can go back, after you've been in the reception area there doing interviews, you can go back to your room, you carry nothing back with you. Be the rubbish bin. Because otherwise you get filled up. And you take on everybody's problems, and you're useless to receive another problem. You're already full. That's a brilliant piece of advice. So those of you in that particular role, in life, you listen to people, help them, care for them, please remember you're a rubbish bin. So they drop the rubbish in you, but have a hole in the bottom. So nothing stays. What are the chances of lay people to be enlightened in the 21st century? Thanks. Oh, not bad. Pretty good, I reckon. Because 21st, it's only 2022, you've got another 78 years yet. Dear Ajahn, in Western Australia we can request for euthanasia. I'm putting to sleep. It's not putting to sleep, it's killing you. This is the same as commit suicide. This is a moral question. Voluntary euthanasia is the thing. Voluntary euthanasia is when you decide, to end your life. And to have voluntary euthanasia in Australia, there's many hoops you have to jump through before you can get the voluntary euthanasia. And some of those hoops you have to go through is, obviously you have to have a terminal disease. It's painful. And you have to have a couple of doctors just to question you, psychiatrist, is it psychologist, to actually give you an assessment. And then if you pass all those tests, then actually you can take voluntary euthanasia. And voluntary euthanasia means that you do all of the switches, usually it's on a computer screen. You can press a button, you know what you're doing, and this is going to kill you, have you done this, done that? It's a very long process, because I remember at one of the conferences we did here many years ago, some of you may have been here at that conference, we invited Dr. Nitschke from Exit International to present to us. What actually is voluntary euthanasia? Because until you know what you're talking about, you can't really make a decision. When I saw just the amount of care and hurdles, safety barriers you had to pass through before you actually press that button to release this stuff inside your bloodstream so it would kill you. It was huge. I couldn't see anyone getting past without them really wanting of their own choice to actually to commit voluntary euthanasia. It's your choice. When people say, well, isn't that suicide? It's totally different from what we normally expect as suicide, because suicide is a decision you make very quickly. It can be sort of depressed, anxious or whatever, but you make that decision very quickly. There was once one of our caretakers a long time ago, he moved over to Beverley, and he was depressed, and he was living in a caravan, but he had a big shed behind. So he decided to commit suicide, and he tied the rope onto one of the rafters on his shed. He tied the noose. He put the chair there, and he went into the caravan to write the suicide note. And as he was writing the suicide note, the radio was on. And the radio was on, and now we're having an interview with the famous Buddhist monk Ajahn Brahm from Perth. Ajahn Brahm, how are you? And there was an interview, I think it was on 6PR. And he just happened to be listening to it. And as soon as he heard, Ajahn Brahm, why don't you leave me alone? Okay, I admit it, I will not be able to commit suicide. You're on my case. And he came to see us afterwards. And he said, you don't know how close I was to committing suicide. But it just so happened I heard your voice on the radio. And I couldn't do it after that. And he was laughing at that time. He just had a low time, a bad time. But voluntary euthanasia, you can't just do things like that. You know, you have other people around talking with you. And for some people, they make their decision and they follow it through. And if they ask me, I said, I can't make that decision for you. It's voluntary euthanasia. But I can say that if you're doing it for the correct reasons, even once one of the monks committed suicide and the Buddha said, your death will be blameless. You are the owner of your karma. You make that decision. And in this time, you know, I support that legislation, which makes it your choice. And there's enough safeguards there that people won't abuse that. Do people who die of euthanasia, commit suicide, experience jhana nimittas? They can do, no reason why not. When do we tell our family to put us to sleep? You cannot tell your family to do that, because that's your family will be killing you. The same way, okay, I'm going to go over time. Again, when you have like a pet in your household, a dog, say, and the dog gets very, very sick, and the vet says you have to put it down. You have to euthanize it. You have to kill it. So what do? You're a Buddhist. You're not allowed to kill animals. But you're compassionate. So you can't let them suffer like that. And the answer was that I've been telling this strategy for many, many times. And this lady, Judy, she put it into practice. She took her dog to the vet. The vet said, your dog's got cancer, it's not going to get better, you have to put it down. She said, can I spend a few minutes with my dog alone? Which she did. She held it in her arms, cuddled it, looked in its eyes, and asked the dog, do you want to die? Is this the time for you to die? And that was her dog. She loved that dog, been with it for so many years. And she felt the intuition told her the dog did not want to die yet. A very clear message from her dog. So she told the vet, I'm taking the dog home. And the vet told something like, you call yourself a Buddhist, compassionate? That dog is hurting. We've got to take it out of its misery. He said, no, I'm taking it home. You Buddhists are just so sort of extreme. She scolded Judy. 6 months later, she took the dog back to that vet. It made a full recovery. And the vet looked over it and checked it out and said, yes, your dog is healthy. You Buddhists are very wise. Because if that's your dog or cat, you've got no right to make the decision for it. It should live, it should die. That's the dog or the cat's decision. And if that's your cat, your dog, you've loved it for such a long time, you'd very easily know what its choice is. And if you take it to the vet, the choice is, yeah, the cat's had enough. It just wants to be put down. It's the cat's choice, it's not yours. You're not killing the cat, you're just conveying the cat's wishes to the vet. That's actually how it works. And it's the same, you can't put down your auntie, your grandma or whatever. Even if she's in a coma, sit by her and ask her, do you want to die? Do you want to carry on for a while? If that's your loved one, it's pretty easy, with intuition, just when you stop thinking, you feel, to know what's the right thing to do. If you tell the doctor that turn the life support off, it's because you know that that's a wish of your mother or your father. You're not killing her. You're conveying their wishes to the doctor. Okay. Oh, book boy. Are you okay just carrying on for a while, or should I do this tomorrow morning? Okay, go, okay. How to comfort someone whose mum has passed away, overdosed, and has been something in the past, abused in the past. In relative to your dad, who was kind, her mum was not. What metaphor to use, since it was never a good concert? Thank you. It's never that good concert, but there's so many other things which you have experienced in life. And his mum has passed away, overdosed, and has been abused in the past. Well, you can say that it's like a freedom. When my own mother passed away, because she was in a dementia ward, honestly, when I heard that news that she was in UK, she'd fallen over, and eventually, just 2 days later, she passed away. I told my brother it was like she was released from a prison, the prison of dementia, and I felt actually happy for her, because her quality of life in the dementia ward was not that great, and it was wonderful. Now she was free. You know that people get reborn again. When they get reborn again, we wish them a much better life next time. So if your mum has passed away, overdosed, and has been abused in the past, what we usually do in Buddhism, we do some charity or something and dedicate the merits, the good karma, to your mum. So may you have a wonderful life next life, and not such a difficult time in the next life. And I do this, in the sense, I'm happy that abuse and that thing which caused you to overdose is not there anymore. You pass through this problem in this life. You're free from that. But please, in your next life, please don't do it again. To help you have a much better life, we're going to share some merits with you. I believe in that. That actually happens. Can you elaborate on consciousness in the 5 khandhas, please? It's the 5 khandhas, it's body, let's say feelings, well, body's like stuff. Feelings, perceptions, will, that's the main part of sankhara, and also consciousnesses. Sometimes in the 5th khandha, we talk, there's the components of existence, we think of just consciousness. It doesn't mean consciousness. Vijnana is consciousnesses, 6 different types. So whenever I teach from the suttas, I always mention that 5th khandha is consciousnesses. That makes it a totally different ballgame. When it's consciousness, we think of a soul or some cosmic consciousness, but these are totally different types of consciousness. Consciousnesses. How do you do standing meditation? You stand, and you're aware. It's a difficult meditation to do because it's quite uncomfortable. Can you also do swimming meditation? You have to do it slowly. Just one arm at a time. Now, it's very difficult to do swimming meditation, isn't it? Because it's meant to be done fast. I think swimming meditation is much more difficult because it takes much more effort. It's not as calm and peaceful as walking meditation or sitting meditation. Can prescription drugs, e.g. painkillers, antidepressants, etc., affect one's meditation practice? Depends exactly what those painkillers are. Antidepressants can affect your meditation practice, but after a while, the painkillers and antidepressants, they can really only affect your brain. The meditation affects your mind. It's actually going to a different part of your being. And so after a while, those antidepressants and painkillers, you can actually go past those. How often do you get angry? When was the last time? Who wrote that question? Oh, I'm going to win. A long time ago. How do you manage to have the energy, the smile, the cheerfulness in every session? Make sure the sessions don't last long. Now, sometimes you run out of energy. I'm getting old now, so honestly, what I do if I run out of energy, I either take a rest, a break, or sometimes you meditate. That's the amazing thing. There are quite a few times that you really get worn out and tired. I remember once over in Singapore, we went to give this a concert, and I was just playing myself, giving a talk, and they arrived, in the morning flight. I had to get up really early, go to the airport, check in, Singapore Airlines, get to Singapore just about 1 o'clock, and I was just in time to go to the matinee. And all the other people, they just lived there, and after I did my bit, then they went off for afternoon dinner or something, the lunch or supper or whatever. But anyway, then I couldn't eat anything, so I had about an hour before we started the second session. And I didn't know what to do because I was exhausted. Got up really early, maybe 3 o'clock in the morning, travelled, and now had to do another performance. So what I did, and I've done this so many times, is actually go and find a quiet place, sit down and meditate. And you're exhausted when you started. And afterwards, your body just gets straight, your mind becomes empowered, and you could really perform, give a really nice talk. I've done that so many times in my life. You know exactly what to do to really get energies up when you really need them. And you just do it through meditation. What are the 5 hindrances? I've told those many times. In brief, like wanting, aversion, sloth and torpor, restlessness and remorse, and skeptical doubt. Doubt is good, but sometimes we think too much of doubt. And a lot of times, what's a simile of doubt? I can't resist this simile. The simile of doubt is, the Buddha used to say, it's like being lost in the desert. You've got no signpost, you don't know where you're going, which way to go. So there's once, I think you can relate to this, because we had a really hot spell. There was this traveller who'd been lost in the desert, and he was suffering from probably heat stroke, really hot, and dehydration. He was crawling through the sands of this desert. And he was maybe only half an hour to live or something. He was really in a bad state. And in the distance, he saw something shimmering on the horizon. And he thought, I'm just imagining this. It's just a delusion, a mirage, from being close to death. And as he was looking at it, the mirage started to become clearer. And he would look at it, and he couldn't believe what he was seeing. What he saw, it was like there was a sled with 8 husky dogs in front, and a man who was dressed like an Inuit, indigenous Indian, like what we used to call Eskimos, just driving this sled with all the furs on in the middle of the desert. He said, I'm really going crazy, this can't be real. What is a person wearing furs in the middle of a hot desert doing? Driving husky dogs. But as it came closer, you could actually hear the dogs actually barking. And as they came closer, even the dogs started licking him. It was real. And so he said, oh my goodness, thank you, thank you, thank you. I've been lost in this desert for days. You've saved my life. And the Inuit, the driver of the husky dog, says, and you think you're lost? Sorry. Many years ago, I could observe heat and think it as a mind object. Is it possible that we can do this? Ever since I started learning to feel bodily sensations, I couldn't do this anymore. I'm a bit upset because being able to observe heat in the mind, it ceases faster. Thank you. But sometimes the heat doesn't cease, does it? Sometimes it's dangerous. Sometimes you end up as the Inuit driving a dog sled through the desert because you don't really understand what heat is. But you could do that in the past. But remember, the past is a long time ago. You have to deal with the present moment now. So if it is really hot, please actually make peace with the heat. Getting upset and angry at it makes you more tense. And the more tense you are, obviously, the more you feel that heat, and it's more like hurtful and dangerous it is. What is friendship? Friendship is finishing the talk at an appropriate time. I like friendship. The most important part of friendship is really, no matter what gender you are, no matter what age you are, no matter what status you are, no matter what religion, race, ethnic origin you are, that's nothing to do with stopping you being friends. When you don't want anything, you just want to be kind to somebody else. You just accept them for who they are. You can be a friend with anybody. When you spread that loving kindness to others, you can even be friends with ants and little mice. Have you ever actually been so friendly with animals? These are snakes, you can pat them on the head. You can do amazing things. They don't feel afraid. You're not afraid of them. They'll never harm you. Because you have friendship which goes way beyond the boundaries of what you think friendship should be limited by. And it's beautiful when you have such friendship. And I was saying this because a few people was asking about what's the difference between Buddhism and other religions in our world. And I managed to get some friendship with many, many different leaders of religion. And I was mentioning to some people that one of the friends, he's passed away now, was Abbot Placid from the Eunorcia monastery. We were good friends. And I remember just when he took me around the Eunorcia monastery many years ago. And it was a very old, one of the oldest buildings in Western Australia. So I had to ask him, in this temple, are there any ghosts? And he said, we're Catholics, we don't believe in ghosts. What about the Holy Ghost then? Got ya. Ajahn Brahm. We're just telling jokes together. And there was another time at the ordination of the first female bishop in the whole Anglican Church worldwide. She's now the Archbishop. That because I was friends with everybody, I got invitation, and together with Abbot Placid representing the Catholic Church, myself representing Buddhism, and there was the head of the Uniting Church at the time. I think his name was Williams or something. Ron Wilson, yeah. He was a good friend as well. So anyway, the three of us were put in the heretics pew. That's what we called it. And it was a 2-hour ceremony to ordain the bishop. It was a long time, much longer than my talks. Just. And so we're getting bored up, so we started telling jokes for one another. Abbot Placid had a great sense of humour. Ron Wilson has a good jokes. And so we're like naughty boys at school, the three of us. They couldn't do anything to us because we were leaders of groups of religions. And so we became really good friends. Dear Ajahn, what is significance of stupa outside the hall? Yeah, we mentioned that. What is mudra, which is Buddhist holding? It's just the way you put your hands. The different sort of positions. So that one over there is supposed to be saying that the Buddha is asking the earth to bear witness that he was supposed to be able to sit in that spot in Bodh Gaya so he can become enlightened. But I remember Ajahn Jayasaro in Thailand. He was a good friend. And he would say the meaning of the mudra, when you put your hands in front of you like this, that's in many of the standing postures. He said that's standing in the defensive wall in a soccer game when they're about to take a free kick. That's Ajahn Jaya. He's a really famous senior monk over in Thailand now. But anyway, so they have different meanings, and you don't need to actually give them too much importance. It's just what they symbolize is mostly important. And I always say the main part of the posture, which you should always focus on, is not what your hands are doing, not how your legs are crossed, not how your back is, but how your mouth is positioned. A nice little smile is the best way to express the Buddha's teachings of kindness and friendliness, and also thankfulness for you all to staying up a bit longer this evening. It's 8:57, to allow all of your questions to be finished. Thank you so much. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. And if I rushed a few of your questions, I apologize if I didn't take your questions at the very end as seriously as they deserve, but I really had to get through them reasonably fast. So thank you. Here we go. No more left. And thank you to the question lady for putting all these in here. Got one over here as well. Excellent. Sorry?
So I didn't even put one in there for myself.
Oh. Do you want to ask one special?
There we go, Hannah.
Yes. Okay. Have a good evening.